When Kelly and I first met at the end of last year, and we were talking a little bit, she was telling me about the work, the summit, and we were talking about, I'm like, I would love to be a part of it. And
Bluetooth
so
disconnected. Bluetooth pairing.
Who is connecting? Somebody.
So,
Sorry about that.
that's okay.
I'm not touching it.
And usually I do workshops around growth mindset, and I'm doing a workshop next month around boundaries and learning how to say no and when do you need to be able to do that. So I do a lot of things around sort of more tactical types of things, and well-being strategies. But there is a piece that is near and dear to my heart, which is all about the data. I guess my secret that I could share with, if you knew me, you would know that I actually have a math degree. So I come from a math science background. I majored in math. I minored in physics and physical sciences. I taught math and physics for 8 years. And then I went, education is hard. Kids are wonderful, adults are horrible. I'm going to go do something else. And I was just ready for a change. And I think that has been a constant through my life. I do something for a while and I get pretty good at it. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm happy that I'm good at it and that you like me, but I need to do something new. I need to grow. I need to expand what I'm doing. So I went and I got my project management certification and I became a project manager. And I did that for many years in a variety of industries: software as a service, manufacturing, new product development, particularly in the wireless device space, and then ultimately IT and biotech. While I was at biotech, I was invited to become a leader of a team. So then I kind of shifted from project management leadership to team leader, people leader management. And that was really fun until it wasn't anymore. And so I left going, this is, number one, not sustainable. I think at some point it sort of all blows up. And I think a lot of businesses are approaching that point at some point. They're trying to figure out, they're trying to strategize their way out of it. And they haven't realized that it's the people. Hello. I don't know why that's such an aha moment for some folks. And so I walked away from my corporate job and started studying positive psychology. And I got a certification in applied positive psychology. So applied positive psychology is all about evidence-based interventions for well-being and living a more flourishing life. And because I had that math background, like that evidence-based thing was really caught me. Like, oh, there is research that supports this, and there's more research all the time. I live at the boundary between the data and the structure and the woo-woo. I also am a yoga teacher. I also am a Reiki master. I also studied immersive meditation. Like, I did all of that, and I sort of bring that. I've started to learn how to bring my whole self into the work that I do. So this isn't really, actually, I started putting this presentation together about 1.5 years ago, and I've never presented it to anyone. So you guys are the first, and I'm really excited because it's a really very different presentation than what I usually do, but it's the foundation of why I think the work we're doing is important and why I think people need us. And hopefully this is the argument that can get us into the door with the people who can write the check. Because that at some point is, you show me the money. So let's talk about, here's one of the things we've known for a long time, and there's a whole ton of research. Happy people are more productive by about 30%. Happy people are more committed. When you're happy, you stay. If you're happy in your marriage, you stay in your marriage. If you're happy at your job, you stay at your job. If you're happy with the community that you're engaged in, you stay with that community and you remain engaged. Happy people are more motivated. If I like what I'm doing, I'm going to want to learn how to do it better. I'm motivated to share it with other people. Happy people are more creative, right? We are innovative. We're explorers. Happy people are more collaborative. We're excited to have conversations and share information and share knowledge. Those of us who are no longer in corporate are now happy to come and stand up here and share what we know with all of you and share these things we love. They're more likely to remain with the company, which reduces turnover, and that's good for the bottom line. And they miss fewer work days, also a very good thing for profits. But that's on the individual basis. And so we have lots and lots of research from many years about individuals and the impact that can have. And certainly that's meaningful, but when you're running a company that has 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 35,000 people, how committed are you to that one person who happens to be happy? So the question that comes up from there is, do happy individuals influence a more positive culture and will lead to better organizational performance? Because we know unhappy individuals walk away at some point. But what about the opposite? So the Wellbeing Research Center in Oxford decided, let's see what we can find out with basically crowdsourced data. So this is not a study that was done at any particular organization. And they released a report in May of 2023 called the Workplace Wellbeing and Firm Performance Study. Is there a correlation? The population that they looked at was 1,636 publicly listed companies. They went with publicly traded companies because we have access to their financial data. We actually can gather their information without having to go to them directly. And they looked at work well-being and firm performance. So what does work well-being mean? Well, again, they wanted to use crowdsourced data, so they went to Indeed. Indeed has a workplace well-being score for every company that is, I think it's 10 people or more that they'll start to gather this. And so I just wanted to share just some screenshots from Indeed about what well-being means to them. Happiness. How enjoyable do people find their day-to-day life at work? Purpose. How meaningful do people find their work to be? Satisfaction. How content people feel with the way things are at work? And how manageable do people find their life stress? Ironically, I just looked up a random company to grab this screenshot, and they have a fairly high score. So, and that's a local San Diego company that I grabbed that from. They discover this kind of well-being score based on these statements. I feel happy at work most of the time, kind of rate that on a 1 to 5. My work has a clear sense of purpose. I'm completely satisfied with my job. I don't feel stressed at work most of the time. We all feel stressed at work some of the time. We're all unhappy some of the time. This is not utopia. This is the real world, but kind of generally speaking. And then they also looked at what influences workplace well-being, and that gets tied into that well-being score as well. Influences around achievement, appreciation, flexibility, support, energy, learning, inclusion, trust, lots of things that we've talked about here today already. For firm performance, they looked at the company value in kind of comparison size-wise. So we're not valuing like a 35,000 person company with a 10,000 person company, but sort of equitably sized company value. What were the returns on assets? What were their annual profits, kind of in alignment with comparative companies? and their comparative stock performance. So key indicators that executives are pretty interested in. What is the true profit? You know, what are those markers of profitability? The result? There was a positive and significant relationship between employee well-being and firm performance, which is a little bit of, well, duh. For those of us who look at this stuff a lot, I call this the duh factor. Well, of course, but businesses like data and metrics, they want their KPIs. Those are important to them. So here we go. Well, let's take a look at some of those results. So for the distribution of the well-being indices, company happiness tended to trend right around a midpoint. It's a very normal curve. It's distributed around the midpoint as one might expect. Company purpose tended to be a little bit higher. More people were actually connected to the purpose than were necessarily happy. Company satisfaction, a little wider distribution, a little flat spot on the top, and company satisfaction skews a little bit low. And then overall company stress, very small distribution, skewing high again. Stress tending to kind of run on the higher end. So no big surprise there. But sort of interesting to see in those 1,600 companies, sort of how the data fell, right? Like not everybody was super thrilled, but lots of people were doing pretty well. And then there was sort of this averaging out in this mid-range. The important thing, the kind of interesting thing that comes is what happens when we compare company well-being to firm value, to return on assets, and to profits. All the lines trend up when you start to look at how those comparatives match. All regressions do control for the number of company reviews, the firm size, lagged assets, company intensity, blah, 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 blah. All that kind of corporate stuff that people like to talk. And the study itself goes sort of deep into that. The study's 42 pages long. They really talk deeply about how they normalized this data and how they handled it and the various things that they needed to do to make sure that the cross-sectional data was actually valid. This is probably the thing I found most interesting, and the light lines are almost a little bit hard to see. But they did stock performance analysis. So in January 2021, based on the sort of highest performing companies in their well-being index, so their top 100 companies out of those 1,600, they did a simulated sample investment strategy where in January 2021, they took the top 100 companies with the best well-being scores and they would invested a theoretical $1,000 in January. And then in January of 2022, they did the same thing again. They reevaluated the well-being scores in January of 2022 and invested whatever they had up to that point into that top 100 companies. And then the same thing in January 2023. So across these years, they invested this $1,000 across those. And what they found was it outperformed everything else, particularly when the market was trending up. When the market was trending down, it still ranked a little bit higher, but not as high. So if the market was trending down, fell a little bit, but on these places where the market was trending up, it was significantly higher compared to the other stocks. So they found that investing $1,000 using this strategy for the top wellness scores would leave an investor with around $1,300 by the start of March 2023, compared with roughly $1,100 if they had been invested in only the S&P index. So stock performance, definitely a significant improvement over that. This is one study, right, of crowdsourced, publicly available data. So a lot of people would argue, well, there's some shortcomings here, right? And that's absolutely true. There is a lot more work to be done, and what this study shows is there is more work to be done, and there's a lot more that we want to know. This leaves us with a lot of questions. All of these analyses are correlational. They were not able to establish any causal relationships. So this is only firms that had high well-being scores also tended to be more profitable. No causation across that. Did the well-being actually influence that higher profit? Future research should look to and leverage natural experiments in order to better try to understand a causal relationship. I think those of us sitting in this room are kind of like, duh.
Yeah.
But executives like their data. There are also longstanding concerns related to the use of crowdsourced data. The Indeed Wellbeing Index, those are people who self-select into offering that data, which tend to be people that either feel really good about the company or feel really bad about the company. It's hard to make sure you've got a good cross-section of individuals. And public financial data isn't always the full story. It's just a particular aspect of it. So certainly there is definitely more work to be done, but studies like these invite us. We need to be looking at these things because there's something here that we need to be talking about. So I'm going to pause it there before I go on. Any questions about the research piece? Yeah.
Can you just remind me what organization actually funded the research, did the research?
So it was, I always get the name wrong, so let's go back. It's the University of Oxford Wellbeing Research Center. And if you put workplace well-being and firm performance, DNEV, so he was the lead, the study comes up, it's publicly available.
It's really powerful because, I mean, I had some statistics myself that I just didn't get a chance to say today, but this really grounding it toward like stock performance. I mean, this is what we need in order to sell this, if you will.
Yeah, because this is the kind of thing, especially if we're wanting to look at publicly traded companies. But I think it's even impactful for a company that's private. You can extrapolate. I mean, there's certainly for private companies, just because you're not sharing stocks, you still have profit, right? You still have your financials that you have to follow on. I'm going the wrong direction. So yeah, I mean, there's still company value and return on assets, like any company's got one of those. And they do talk more about, they really dig into details. They've got a ton more data in the full study. So yeah. Any other questions?
There was no actual release, I'm speculating, of how much they invested in wellness and then the rate of return on that?
They didn't even look at, was the company investing in wellness necessarily.
Okay.
So that's one of the, when they talk about the shortcomings,
Yeah.
the people, it was just what is the self-reporting of the individuals
Okay.
who were saying
Okay.
that they had a high level of well-being with the company.
Oh yeah, there were four. Do you have the 4 questions that they asked?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the pieces that is missing is, are these companies actually investing in well-being? My guess is there's probably, if you were to look company by company, there probably is something significant there. And then for me, the follow-up question would be how? How are they investing in well-being?
Yeah.
Right. So I think maybe it was you I chatted with, that I was saying, the company I walked away from was on the list of the top 100 companies to work for in the U.S. Right.
But you buy your way out of that.
That right. And they had lots of well-being. We had an on-campus gym, and we had chefs, and we had wellness apps, and there was like extracurricular activities and baseball teams and things like that. And I don't know about, most of the people I knew were just too busy to take advantage of any of the things that were being offered because we were being asked to do so much.
It would be super interesting, to look at, this is a different study, but how do happiness, purpose, satisfaction, and stress-free, what correlates with a positive response to those things? I mean, that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
The question I had, because I saw something earlier introduced in the study, was that there were 1,600 companies, but 55 responses, right? So.
No, so 1,600 companies, let me go back to this one. So 1,600 publicly listed companies that the study overall looked at.
Right.
This is a screenshot of a company in San Diego. So everything from kind of here down is just a screenshot.
Like a sample.
Of one company, just because I wanted to make sure, like when we say well-being, what do we mean? Like I could probably ask each of you, what does well-being mean to you?
Right.
And we're going to have a pool of different answers. For some of us, it means yoga. For others of us, maybe it means time to go play golf. Or well-being means, I want to learn archery. Like we're not all yogis. We're not all we engage in well-being in different ways. Some of us may be, 1 minute mindful breathing meditators. Others of us may be like, I want 20 minutes on my cushion twice a day. Like that's my that's my happy place. So well-being's tricky, which is why I wanted to introduce, like, how are we going to define well-being? We need to kind of be on the same page with that when we start to have these conversations.
That's fair. The question I was getting, I was just wondering, is like of the 1,600 companies, I'd be curious to kind of look at like, yes, we've got the publicly available financial information, but if we looked at kind of like their various kind of working ethos that they list on their website or something, like plug it all in the ChatGPT and say, hey, well, look at all these websites and say, what do they say about employee well-being on their sites? And I'm just curious about any kind of like
does it correlate to, this study was done before ChatGPT was released. So, but that would be an interesting follow-up. Yeah, certainly more work to be done. How are we on time? We're okay? You want me to conclude?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Then we will wrap it up there. So I'm Andrea Marshall. If you have any other questions, feel free to catch me as we chat. I'll be here for the rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.